welcome to the third session in a series called Data Science and AI for Dummies, or for Company Dummies, more like. It is what it says on the tin. We've been intending to try and share our knowledge base that we've kind of developed in eMerge IQ with anyone who's interested in learning about data science and AI. The first session covered just the basics, some of the ideas around AI and some of the history. The second session was about more of the kind of organizational implementation and the technical know-how. And this session, we wanted to do things slightly differently. They've all had a panel kind of discussion framework, but as a result of this session, we'd hope that we can actually have a workshop kind of activity, so that as a result of the end of the session, those of you who are interested can download. We'll send it at the end, some documentation that we're going to be completing through this session called the Matrix of Change, and it's a model that I used at MIT on a course with the Sloan Business Management School that helps business do digital transformation exercises. And that nicely leads into my introductions to everyone in who's going to be in the panel. This session we are going to look at the airline industry, and we're going to use that as a use case to discuss legacy processes and how they're available now, and how we can move forward into a future state, documenting it in the Matrix of Change, and then have a discussion around various things on that. My name is Mizan Rahman, excuse me. I am CTO of eMerge IQ. It's a data science and AI as a service organization. Our intention is to make what was historically complicated and very highbrow technology facility available to all organizations. I'm joined by Tash, who's CEO, Kuldeep, who is a digital transformation guru, and also helps us in eMerge IQ. Vidhi is one of our staff who develops stuff for us, and Chris is also, he's actually, I guess I can announce him as our Chief Data Officer for the firm. Perhaps you guys can give yourselves an introduction, starting with Tash.
Thanks, Miz. So hi, everybody. Morning, afternoon, evening, I guess, different time zones. I'm Tash Shafiq, CEO of eMerge IQ. Mizan and I are business partners for this startup business. We started this journey some two plus years ago. My background's in banking and finance, so I've dealt with lots of technology projects in the past. I started my career in the trading floor at Goldman Sachs. So come from a very complicated environment, and over the years have worked on very complex programs, including transformation projects, hundreds of £1 million in size across different jurisdictions. So well accustomed to working on transformation projects, but also working with large sets of data. That's me in a nutshell. Hand over to Kuldeep.
Thank you, Tash, and thank you for the warm welcome, Miz. Similarly, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you may be in the world, and a truly international audience. As Miz said, I'm Kuldeep. I'm Managing Director of Innovative Quality Solutions, and I've been working with eMerge IQ and the folks here. My core offering via eMerge IQ is digital transformation simulation training. And I'm an IT and digital practitioner. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. I worked in public and private sector. Let's give you a few clients and a few organizations. I was in PwC in their CI advisory practice. I've worked in the banking sector with State Street, for example, to Citigroup, to Saxo Bank, RBS. In the public sector, I've worked at the University of Cambridge, Durham University. I've been the interim CIO there. And in the local government, I was head of technology and intelligence at Wakefield District Council. And most recently, last year, I just finished up a couple of years at the Excel Convention Centre as head of technology, where I was helping them become a smart venue. So my core expertise is helping organizations transform and change and using technology as the enabler. And I'm delighted to be here on the panel to maybe share some of my thoughts and views.
Thanks,
Over
Chris.
Hi, thanks guys. Good to see everyone here. So my name's Chris. I recently joined Emerge to manage the sort of data science and AI function there. My background spans roughly 20 odd years in quantitative roles in finance and technology. I've been applying machine learning for over a decade in a number of domains, including the financial. But reason I'm excited to be with Emerge is the sheer breadth and scope of what we're doing. You know, not just sort of finance, but all sorts of industries, including insurance and the sort of well-being and healthcare side, which I'm particularly keen to work on. So other than all that, I've got a broad background in tech and engineering, electronic engineering as well. So it's nice to be able to bring that all together here. Cheers.
Lily?
You're on mute.
Oh, my introduction is going to be the shortest. I'm a business and UX analyst. I have just 1 year of experience in this field. Currently a student at Brunel. And yeah, just here with all these geniuses to discuss AI and data science with you.
Thanks for that huge compliment. I'm going to take it because not many people ever give me that. Okay, guys, well, thanks for the introductions. Just before we start the session, I'm going to ask everyone if you're happy to just share, who you are, what kind of industry, two facts about yourselves, industry you work in, and where in the world you're coming from or dialing in from. It's really kind of a bit of an icebreaker for us to kind of know who the breadth of people we're reaching during our sessions. Feel free to just put that into the chat. If you have any questions through the session, please just put them in real time into the chat. And if you're comfortable enough to, when we respond in the questions, and I think this is going to be a bit more of an interactive thing, so we may call them out periodically through the session if we think it kind of links into the part that we're in. If you're happy to turn your video on and speak to everyone on the webinar, then feel free. Otherwise, we can just do some chat on the in the chat room. Okay. So yeah, as and well, if you do, feel free to just pop that information in the chat, and we'll just learn more about those who are attending. It looks like we've already got someone studying from data scientists. We've got, of course, called it sharing his reason. Thanks for getting things going for us. But without further ado, let's talk about the session. So ultimately, we want to look at the importance of why of having a data science strategy in place before you embark on any type of journey. And data science and AI is part of, is a practice within a digital transformation journey of an organization. And you may remember organizations such as Blockbuster Video, Kodak, the two big names that resonate across the world, and in huge failure to not be able to keep up with I guess the technology Joneses, and really have a foresight of exactly where they needed to be to keep up with technology. That's even more compelling for Kodak, given that they're the ones who invented the digital camera. And then you fast forward, because people have really kind of adhered to digital transformation and called it. And when we go through this exercise, you'll see that in the airline industry that we're going to be tapping into, movements are happening. But now we're looking at data science and AI. So take technology and now apply this new kind of shiny facility where using data you can automate human kind of engagement or kind of efficiencies and productivity, and perhaps segue humans into doing other things while you can automate. And now that's still, in my our experience in Emerge IQ, still in its infancy, apart from the big players. And that's something which is very important for organizations to start thinking about. So we're going to be doing an exercise in the next, say, 50 minutes to complete, excuse me, to complete a document, a view. I'm going to have to take a drink, excuse me. Called the Matrix of Change. Okay, so I'm going to share my view and just give you a kind of high-level overview of what this is. Okay, it's we will provide, as a result of this, links to the recordings and also a bit more explanation around how the Matrix of Change works. So this isn't a session to teach you guys about the Matrix of Change, but hopefully through the session it will, ignite some interest in why this model is quite a useful model to kind of use. But very high level, we're going to be looking at existing sub-processes within the airline industry. We're going to talk about those and then look at what kind of future states of the industry relative to those legacy kind of existing states that this industry can potentially look at. And then the whole point of Matrix of Change is you look at the relationship of where you are now and where you want to be, and then you kind of discuss the challenges, and we'll have some debate around challenges with some of the examples, and see whether there's a relationship and opportunities, and you kind of mark X's and opportunities between the here and future, and then ultimately you start to kind of formulate a kind of priority and a way in which you can actually develop a strategy. And not only do you look at the relationship between your current state and your future state, you then look at interdependencies between each of your legacy state and your future states, again to see what you potentially can implement at the same time, or where the synergies lie or they don't. Okay, so that's very high level, and at risk of repeating myself, we will provide you guys with links to explain the Matrix of Change if you're interested in using this as your own kind of transformational model. So I guess handing over to Cordit very briefly, the reason why we're using the airline industry is it's quite a very complicated industry, and Cordit, you can give maybe a minute explanation why we've picked airlines and show the various moving parts that we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, we just need somebody to give me share access as a participant.
Hold on, yeah, I'll stop sharing.
That would be great. Fantastic. So why the airline industry? So what I try to put into this one slide is the kind of the journey that we tend to go through when we're booking up to go on holiday or even a business trip. There's always some trigger, some inspiration, some need to travel, or used to travel. That's obviously diminished as due to the pandemic, but we'll return. We book up, or we get somebody to book it up for us. We prepare ourselves. We get our jabs. We make sure we know we're organized for the trip. We prepare. We book our taxis to get to the airport with our luggage. Then we get on to we have an in-flight experience when we're traveling. We get to our destination, and then there's somebody there to greet us, maybe or maybe not, and we have to travel onwards to our hotel or wherever we're staying, get to our destination, and then there's a post-trip experience, and there's a return journey. And the reason that we picked the airlines is it's something that everybody can resonate with. They've been through this one or many times. And as you can see on this slide, what I've tried to do is just show across those that customer journey, there's many technology touch points. So underpinning that journey, there'll be business processes or activities that you go through, and then you use technology or a system or an application, it might be on your mobile phone or wherever, that allows you to do those activities as you go along. And what this picture really is to show you that it's complex. It's complex. It's full of tech, and underneath so you got your customer journey, you got your processes, Then you got your technology, and underneath the technology, you'll have an infrastructure and some forms of databases and systems which keep all our data in some shape or form, personal, private data even, and maybe some sentimental data on our journey. And really what it also highlights to is there's probably overlap, there's a lack of integration, one system maybe not talking to another system, and so there's probably lots of consolidation, rationalization we can do. And from a kind of data perspective, where's the data stored? How do we capture it? How do we store it? How do we convert it in terms of ETL processes? How do we govern it? How do we make sure it's of high quality? And how do we then transform it to give us some insights and some meaning to it, going from that kind of descriptive to prescriptive and kind of predictive model for data science. And all I wanted to show in this journey, and I'll hand back to Miz, is it's not a clean, easy journey, and lots of areas probably for improvement and automation.
Thanks, Kudip. So, yeah, as you can see, that I mean, this is to me quite high level. That this is just looking at the various systems out there, and you can really appreciate the magnitude of data that there's an opportunity here to apply data science, AI, and connect all these dots and really try to improve a customer relationship and journeys and really the organization itself, and then ultimately capitalize from it, right? So, and this isn't limited to the airline industry, and that's the most amazing thing about change, right? We're picking one use case, but this can be applied. You look at health and well-being, or insurance, and all these different sectors. There are all these moving parts, which in some sectors they're not even thinking about. Applying some forward thinking on what their data strategy should be. Okay, so let's start completing some of this matrix of change. I'm going to just put it out to it's a panel kind of forum, so we're going to kind of try to informally kind of have some dialogue around what we're seeing. Can you guys see the matrix of change view again? Okay, yeah. So I'll put it out to Kudip first. These are the existing processes. So do you want to give me an example of an existing process that potentially the airline industry wants to look at? We should look at.
Well, the travel, the journey just from from your house to the airport in a nice, safe, secure way, especially considering a lot of the we're in the kind of COVID era. How do you ensure that customer journey, not just from that bit, but right the way through the whole life cycle of activities? How do you turn that legacy?
We could take this back to the booking point, right?
Yeah.
Booking through to travel.
Yeah.
Okay, and this for just a brief explanation. These are kind of the departments or the areas of an organization that you could just say this is ops. And something like that, for argument, I'm not going to bother completing that bit, but you guys can on documentation learn more about exactly what the definitions are in those areas. Vidi, anything from you? What other kind of legacy processes do you see in the airline industry?
Like prediction of fuel consumption between. It is starting to get automated, but it's still not there because we still face a lot of problems with CO2 emissions and how much percentage of carbon is released by the entire aviation industry per year. So that is something that needs to be looked into.
So I'm going to put it down here, probably in kind of flight services.
Fuel consumption optimization.
Fuel consumption and optimization. Okay. So that's a huge thing in the airline industry as well, and how they're managing that. I mean, of course, they're probably doing that a lot anyway. And I don't know, Kudip or even Chris, you guys want to remark on that type of part of an operations in that type of industry. But the data itself is going to be very valuable in making decisions around, in the future of how they're consuming you know, their fuel.
I mean, there's the whole, they probably got quite a lot of established analytical approaches to deal with this, but something that's becoming more important is actually trying to predict commodity prices, things like fuel. And I know companies out there who are actually offering this as a service where they actually monitor things like satellite imagery and combine all this sorts of data to try and, you know, get that one step ahead on forecasting where your price of fuel is going to be. As we know, fuel hedging and is a massive sort of issue for the airlines, and you know, they get it wrong and it can sort of crush their profitability. So you know, that's, but maybe we're kind of drifting away from this particular.
No, I mean, it's all valid stuff.
One of the thought there, Miz, is that the aircraft generate not gigabyte, terabytes of data from all their onboard systems. How can you cope and manage and analyze such large volumes of data? It's really a big challenge.
Well, that's actually, you know, if we look at the future state of this stuff, so
provides software that processes video streams from airfields using image.
Ooh.
Nice little guest appearance from a bot or something there. Yeah, but that's the point, and we will talk about the challenges between the current state and the future state. And excuse me, we should put some future state on here. So, you know, with legacy customer journey, I'd say that the future state would be something like a fully personalized and automated service, right? And that's using data. We can talk about how actually, you know, we're all very fully aware of the data protection issues, but if used properly, it can really help people, right? We can use location services. We can use our organization actually a sensory AI expert. So we're looking at wearables and Chris mentioned the wellness stuff, that we can start detecting people's wellness and well-being using this stuff. And you can really use data to automate a lot of kind of services. So I'd say that the future state for legacy customer journey, and that's your typical kind of systems that you use now, could have a fully automated kind of environment. Tash, what about you? Suggestion of a legacy system and a future state?
I mean, you just have to look at history, right? That debacle of Heathrow Airport in 2008, there was a £16 million failure, IT systems failure. For me, baggage issues is a major problem. When I travel, imagine going to your destination and having not your baggage delivered to your holiday resort, and you having to buy things locally, huge expense, claiming insurance. It just becomes a nightmare. So for me, the as-is situation, if I compare and look at history, like the 2008 issue, you'd want that to be improved over time from the current state that it is to what it can be in the future.
Nice. So let's put that in baggage handling, processing. And so the future state we're looking at is something to the, I don't know, full tracked automation. So I'm just see where that lines up with.
Yeah, just imagine this, right? Track and trace is what is being overused all the time. But imagine someone leaving your plane first, like maybe say business class and first class passengers who leave, and they expect their priority service. It comes through, they grab their bags. But instead of having a queuing system of people waiting for their baggage, why not have an alert into your phone through your Heathrow Airport app or whatever it is, whichever airport you're at, or even the airline, giving you that future kind of ease of travel, so that you don't have to wait around depending on when you leave your plane or how your baggage was handled in the cargo. There's some efficient way of you getting that input and data up front. Maybe I'll go for a little coffee because my baggage is on its way. It's got a tag. So why wait around being bored, waiting for your luggage to come last? Well, go and have a loo break or have some coffee.
Makes sense.
Another future state. That's how I would imagine it. And that's all about data, isn't it? All these data points, the tags on your baggages, talking to different systems. giving you feedback constantly so that you're aware where things are.
Absolutely. Okay, so what else have we got? Kuldeep, another example?
I think very closely related to that would be preparing flights for the next. So once the flight has landed and everyone's left the flight, preparing it for the next journey. So I think I just read this research, I think just last night, where it said airline companies are losing a lot more money than by just, maybe the catering truck is late or fuel, refueling the flight is taking longer than expected, just stuff like that. They lose a lot more money per minute than extreme weather conditions. So just optimizing for that.
So this is preparation. Just say
Just preparing for the next flight.
Plane prep, plane and flight prep.
Just on that, and this goes to sort of security as well, which is a big part, obviously, of the the sort of customer action at the airport. You're constantly having to re-show your boarding card, re-show your passport, and to Vidya's point, how many times have you been on a flight and you're just sitting there because a particular passenger hasn't showed up? There's a potential to integrate all this information and make the whole thing much more seamless. Privacy issues aside, with things like face recognition.
Yeah, good point, Chris. I'm just reading the chats.
Yeah.
Someone's mentioned about adding visa. Mike, you've mentioned about adding visa and passport as a sub-process. Hugely important, right?
Okay.
And payment of travel, he's just mentioned.
Yeah, so that kind of falls quite nicely into the kind of personalized and automated customer service. So you've got, in an ideal world, and you know what, the BA actually did a test kind of initiative. They hired a digital transformation expert. I was at a talk with them a few years ago where they actually they literally sent, they had a whole bunch of volunteers and they were sending them through the entire journey from before even getting to the airport and monitoring all of the data points and touch points that they were doing to try and understand what is the most efficient journey. And it was a kind of combination of data analysis and user experience and payments and paying for that, include payments. And I think payment services was on Kuldeep's slide there. So yeah, it is a valid use case to include in that kind of entire journey.
And now, Miz, is going to be a need for a COVID pass. You're going to have more documentation on hand, and you're going to have to scan people to check their temperature and all sorts. There's loads of processes, additional processes that are coming in play.
So I mean, I'm going to just pair some up just for.
Yeah, go for it.
You've got the arrival stuff, even though it doesn't fit in there, but it's passenger arrival. And the future state would be queuing control, COVID tests.
We've got COVID travel pass. Someone said in the chat.
Yeah.
Exactly. So how does that kind of get kind of assimilated into the system? Do we, before your journey, you register that pass, and then so that at the end of the journey, when you're at the queue, when you're arriving and you're going through border control, that's all acknowledged. There's other things where some borders are very tight and they're taking temperature controls and physical well-being kind of sensors. So you're going into a box and there, what's the transformational kind of message there, and how do we work with the data to ensure that you make an efficient kind of a seamless journey through that process? I mean, there's so many things to consider. So yeah, they're all very valid points. I'll put that as a in parentheses because I can't put the future state in here. Unfortunately, I'm running out of space. But okay, we've got some space for some others. I'm going to throw one in there. On the arrival side, on the customer journey, I don't believe the follow-up situation is ideal. So I know it's end-to-end. This is, you know, we're looking at customer booking to travel, but it's like the post-journey relationship, let's call it. Right now, there doesn't really tend to have, you don't tend to have a post-journey relationship with your airlines. Some of them do, they're trying their best. But we've already collected data in the future state. We're collecting data on individuals. You know, you've downloaded their app, you've already bought their tickets, you've been on the flight, you've checked in your baggage, all this stuff. And you know where they've been. How do you keep your customer warm? I don't know, guys, does anyone want to chime in potentially of a future state?
Yeah, I mean, some like low fidelity, using your words, Mies, the word fidelity. You know, on your experience, you know, you have those smiley faces on your way out, and you give feedback right on your way out of your airline. How was your travel journey? How was the meal? A lot of airlines have those touch screens. They can select their, you know, what was their service like? You know, how are the hosts, airline hostesses, how they've been treating you? You know, did they pay attention to you switching that light on? Did they come on time or not? Did they ignore you? All those kind of things. It's not as focused. It's kind of a generic feedback loop, right? So, and not every airline does that. So yeah, that could be something, could be part of an app. Further data points that they could do follow-ups post that, if the customer was happy or not. There's a bunch of ways that they could look at the future state.
Can you imagine that at mass? Because we don't do that now. We could probably be in a, you know, we in a kind of raw form, and perhaps Chris, you can comment on the concept of collaborative filtering, right? And collaborative data analysis, right? You look at what's working versus what's not working on a grand scale, and then it means that you can also apply machine learning in the future as and when stuff's coming through. Maybe Chris, you can, in a very Homer Simpson kind of speak, explain how that works. But you improve services as a result.
Yeah, I mean, the recommendation systems, they're pretty well established now. I mean, they cover things like everything from Amazon and Netflix to your sort of online shopping. It's the classic, users, customers that bought this also like this. And it's quite remarkable, actually. I mean, you can think of that as a different kind of matrix in itself, but you don't actually need that many entries in this sort of grid of customers and services or items purchased to kind of have a good guess as to, what any given customer would make of any given product. So, whether it's products or services, and, as technology improves, you can even augment that and try and get feedback onto how your customers are feeling. I mean, you could conceivably, it's a bit Orwellian, but you could look at faces and judge their expressions. But, more closer to this year, people could wear wearables. If you've got nervous flyers, for example, you could monitor them and bring them some water if they're feeling uncomfortable and reassure them. There's all sorts of stuff you could do.
Actually, that's another item that is legacy, and that's the in-flight services. It's very old school, right? For example, right now you press a button to request the attention of a steward to come and help you, give you water or something like that. By connecting the data, and if we could be as bold to say we're kind of like monitoring and have that relationship in real time with a passenger, even if they want to send a message from their seat up to the stewards and the help, that saves them a journey, right? They know that they need some help in a specific area rather than having to walk all the way down an aisle, blah, 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 in the midst of something. You've just halved their kind of time by already kind of understanding what the passenger's kind of sentiment or needs are a lot quicker. So in fact, I'll put that in as the last. Actually, no, that's kind of in-flight post. That's kind of, I'll put that in parentheses here, like in-flight service, because it is kind of customer service thing. We've got a gap here.
So there was this I think, experiment conducted by Heathrow a few years back, where traditionally they would do customer surveys asking each customer how easy was it for you to, locate those direction boards within the airport. And they found out that those responses weren't as accurate as they'd like it to be, because they were still having problems with directing traffic to different gates and different terminals and stuff like that. People were getting lost. I'm sure we've all been there. So what they did was they gave a certain group of users these glasses, which actually tracks your vision, where you're looking at. And they did a lot of data analysis and stuff like that, and they found that these are the certain points where every user kind of looks at with the help of those glasses, and they situated those direction boards and maps and stuff like that on those location points, which was really cool. So obviously it's very it's very new, and it's still being tested out, but that's a really cool way to direct traffic and find out where.
So I was going to add to that, was going to say tracking and monitoring footfall is really important in spaces, particularly an airport, because you want to then put your digital signage. This is what you're alluding to, Vidi. Where do you put your digital signage so that where your footfall is, it's big and visual? You don't. What you find at some airports is there's lots of digital signage, and it's confusing. What you want is more is less. What I mean, a nice big board with all the flight times, with all the directions on one board, and it's at where everybody is going, traversing. And so there are this technology now that allows you to monitor your footfall through mobile devices, to track that and then think about where you're going to put your signage. Absolutely, it's a great point.
And how many people miss their flights
because
they drop their passports at security? So referring to when we were actually road showing, I don't know, we were traveling. Me and Tash were traveling to the Euros a few years ago. Dropped his passport. Having tracking and stuff like that available to you, be it if you're going to be late to the gate or something like that, and is something that could be hugely beneficial to both the airline and the customer. So crowd control is, I think, is something which, oh God, in an airport that they certainly should be considering. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can see we've kind of, and this is not limited to, guys, the matrix of change is just looking at existing processes and really trying to identify those areas that, you want to try and look at. And, I should have been a bit more interactive here. And while we were looking at the challenges, so, maybe we can call out some specific challenges that we might be facing in transforming some of these processes into the future state, starting, if this is your suggestion, the customer journey. This part of the matrix actually sees the relationship. Is it, is there a good relationship between the current state and future state, bearing in mind the challenges? And, do you mark it as, X marking it as a good relationship, and therefore it's easy for us to transform, versus a zero, which is, oh, actually, we're going to be having a few challenges because this, and then we start formulating a kind of relationship map. So cool. I guess,
my overarching thought is I've worked in many organizations in many sectors. How many of them have actually mapped out their customer journey? I would say there's probably a low amount. I think it's so important to map out that customer journey and those business processes, because once you do that, and you, as you said, Ms., you get somebody to walk it through, you can work out where things are working well or where there's pain. And the pain could be related to lack of information, lack of technology, whatever it might be. And the other thing is, what I've seen in organizations, they think that customer service just happens, but it's not true. You've got to design in customer service. It's a process you go through to design in where against those pain areas. So if you map out your customer journey and look at those pain areas, what is the pain due to lack of information, lack of technology, lack of business processes, a lack of whatever? How do you know what you're going to fix if you haven't mapped out your customer journey? So that's a real starting point. And a lot of organizations, public and private sector, are going down that path. I mean, I'll give you an example, HMRC and government have been mapping out their customer journey. So when you pay for your tax or your VAT or whatever, that journey is trying to be improved all the time. And it's called system design thinking. And the other thing I would say, just to kind of finish off, is we talked about customer tracking and monitoring. Customer tracking and monitoring doesn't just happen at the end of your trip or your journey. It starts at the beginning, because in whatever you design in terms of your service, you've got to have, the thinking now is that you've got to have feedback loops all the way through, because you build things. The digital mantra is build things in small size chunks, so it's lower risk. So, and you're constantly engaging with your end user customer to get the feedback, so you're designing the right thing. So feedback is not, let's send out a survey at the end of your journey, fill in a card. When you go in the airport, you fill in your card, how was your journey? That's great, but you need to do it constantly right through. And if you look at the organizations that provide fantastic customer service, and I know I've worked in the events industry, I know the Singapore hotels find a fantastic service there because they monitor and track that service they use chatbots, they use robots, they use all sorts of technology to get that customer feedback. I'll shut up now.
No, you've made some really great points, and I've just been completing this a bit willy-nilly, but trying to take on board what you're saying and seeing where the relationships apply between before and after. And you can see, I'm just going to use the top row as an example, that we can see there's a relationship between this customer journey and some quite, in fact, that there is a relationship here where part of that journey, you want to capture the sentiment, you want to get through that journey. So there is a relationship here, and with that as well. And then there is similarly the tracking and the monitoring with the customer service. And you can now see that with this legacy process, the future state actually, by implementing some change, you may be you may have, you're covering some of the future state at the same time, if that makes sense, by transforming it. I'm just going to call out a couple of others. So let's go back to the crowd control thing, because I think that's quite a compelling use case to discuss around some of the challenges that you'd have to face in applying, looking at data science and AI to try and automate this process. And I'm going to put it out there, Vidi, because you made the suggestion, data protection and privacy, right? Of course, you haven't been privy to some of the conversations we have with our lawyers, because we do have some hotshot lawyers who make sure that we're very well protected, and we're part of the UK government AI ethics kind of a group that help promote the government's their understanding of how we should be applying AI and be ethical about it. Vidi, to you, when it comes to the challenges, what do you think you'll be facing?
I think it's easy to protect yourself, but to actually get users to participate in your, data collection, stuff like that. Like, for example, with the Heathrow thing where they made users wear those glasses, it was very challenging for them to get users to actually wear it, because they were like, what are you tracking? I don't know what you're tracking. This doesn't feel right. Like, why are you tracking my eye control? So just getting that first step in is so difficult sometimes. And then obviously, when you have so much data with something like where your eyes are pointing at, just imagine the amount of sophistication that's needed to process something like that. So it's challenging right from the start into getting users to actually participate and work with you. And then the post, cleaning up the data, actually making sense of it. It's all challenging. But the results obviously I think outweigh the challenges.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to mark that. So there's a relationship here with the crowd control and travel passes, or whatever you want to call it, and customer tracking and monitoring, right? There is a clear challenge there, and even though there's a nice synergy between the current state and the future state, I think there's going to be, there is people, to try and get on board here, and that is a huge challenge. But hopefully, when they see the benefit, it's about weighing up those benefits and making sure that the customers, they appreciate what's being provided to them as a digital service, and they will accept the terms of the GDPR terms and the usage terms, because GDPR, by the way, is a control mechanism to make sure that organizations are really looking after people's data. They're not selling it on, and they're not using it for adverse reasons. As long as an organization has good reason behind wanting to capture that data and providing services, and it's part of their operational requirement, then that data can be used to hopefully fulfill those requirements. And as a result, we hope that users and customers potentially jump on board and start using some of the systems.
Like I think the same thing with Autopilot. Like I'm pretty sure a plane can fly itself by now.
Oh, it does. It does.
It pretty much does. But you still need to have two pilots in place, just not to scare off people, because no one will fly if you tell them, oh, it's just flying itself.
Yeah, that's true.
But a lot of it has got to do with people and how they perceive certain technologies. And I think as time passes on, as we start to live with more and more automated processes, it will get easier to get people involved.
Yeah,
I think it's worth pointing out that a lot of this is already happening in China. So whereas you can't sign up for sort of even like a mobile phone without having your sort of image of your face on a database. So there's a lot of tracking already going on. So from a technical standpoint, a lot of these issues have been solved. It's really more cultural and jurisdictional in terms of acceptance, I think is the key here.
Yeah. I actually, there's a member of the audience Mike, who's just put a point about the GDPR as well. Mike, if you feel free to chime in and join the conversation if you want to talk about it while we're talking about it. Otherwise,
Yeah, having seen the chat, it just sounds like we're constantly ripping Mike off here.
But it's an important thing. Like, but data privacy, GDPR, it's absolutely necessary. As we are, we're using these systems, and we're on one side you've got technology companies and organizations who want to use the data to provide better services and improve their businesses. On the other side, you've got customers who, there is animosity towards us, it being used in certain ways. So that's something that has to be tackled, and there will be a lot of challenges, I think, ongoing around that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a quick point on the cultural piece that Chris brought up. My theory after 20 years of working in business and IT is people aren't resistant to change. They just have hopes and fears. Their hopes are, of all the change programs that have happened before, this time their desires in terms of the things that they want to improve will happen. And people are fearful usually because they don't know what's coming. So you just need to demystify it for them and tell them this is what the value and the benefits of this will be for them personally and in their role and their job. So those cultural issues just require education, support, and mentorship, in my view.
That's a great point from Kuldeep. I mean, if you look at newspaper articles on, say, WhatsApp changing their privacy policies and so forth, reading some of these newspaper articles, you'd imagine there'd be a massive exodus of users, but it just doesn't happen because people feel they're getting something in return.
And that's it. It's about the value.
Yeah.
Right. And as long as people are getting the value, then hopefully, they're getting something out of it. Okay, so moving on, I guess. We are running out of time, so this does come at a good time because we want to open up for questions. Perhaps before we do that, this is, this is very, very quick kind of completion of the matrix of change. And you can see that, ultimately we've just put a load of legacy stuff in processes in there. We've discussed some future states. We're trying to identify the relationship between the two, and hope, if you complete the whole central section, you can then actually order it. You can take it off, off the matrix, and you can start looking at priorities around, well, hold on, if this is clearly quite important, because you can tick off a whole load of these other kind of future states by actually looking at one specific type of implementation. So it's really there to give you that optics into building your own strategy, and I think it's quite a useful tool. If anyone's got any questions around that, you can feel free to contact us offline, and we can share some intel around how this is going to be useful. I guess we can move on to just some Q&A and some other discussion around this. But actually, before we do that, we're going to put a poll out. We've got a poll to put out to the entire group, and that's to ask what. Well, I guess we just get the poll up and we can answer it. So, Hiro, do you want to just load the first poll? Okay, so this is just a very generic question around where people are in their own kind of, if they're in organizational, if they're in an organization and they're looking at data science and AI and different kind of digital transformations, whereabouts they are in their journey. And even panelists, feel free to respond, and we'll look at the results shortly. We'll give it another 10 seconds, maybe. Hiro, how are the results looking? You're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Discovery stage, we're at 65%. Initiation, 12%. Implementation, 6%. Execution, 6%, and post-execution, 12%.
I mean, that speaks volumes. Just looking at the first two stats, we're coming up to 80%.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of echoes our point in that a lot of SMEs or a lot of organizations who aren't the big players, who haven't got the resources that they have to be able to throw a whole load of money to hire a whole department that is responsible for delivering our entire data science kind of transformational exercise, or even any type of digital transformation exercise, isn't there. So it's a good time for people to start thinking about it, and especially if you're an established organization. We're working with an environmental health agency. It was an ex-government agency. It's now private, but so it's been around for donkey's years. Responsible for looking at air monitoring and pollution and stuff like that. They helped us. They identified an old legacy way of monitoring asbestos and kind of air pollutant stuff, and they came to us saying, "Look, we've got this problem. It's decades old problem of this analysis being done manually, and is there capacity for us as a small company to help develop an AI data science solution that will help automate this process to make our lives better and improve and future-proof their organization?" And that was the fundamental thing. And they're now helping us become hopefully the first to market in this country, at least, and in Europe, to develop a lot more of an automated process around some of the analysis that we're doing using our platform and the AI that we're developing with them. So and they hadn't even thought, it was just a meeting we had with them to talk about various things, and it was like, well, you can future-proof your organization by thinking a bit ahead. Right, let's put it out to questions. If anyone has any for the panel, for us, we've seen Tash respond to Aisha. Yeah, please get in touch with us separately. You know, do you want to put any questions in the chat around the matrix of change, digital transformation? Feel free to call them out. Otherwise, I'm just going to get the panelists I'll Q&A some of the panelists. Okay, so thanks, Mike. What about, okay, so I've got a question for Cordit. We've got a few minutes. You know, in your experience, when you're speaking to councils and other organizations, what, you know, AI data science aside, what is the most prevalent kind of digital transformation practice that people are looking at to try and establish change within an organization?
Well, there's a number of things. Because you've called out a council, I might give you kind of a local government answer.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I just,
no.
The reason why I said that is because it's local government, they're very legacy, right? So there's some,
yeah.
You know.
So, you know, one of the things that councils, one of the biggest reasons that they exist is to kind of serve their residents. So they're using a lot of technology like CRM technology so if you go to a local government council, borough council, you'll see a really nice website with all their services, because they're really trying to digitize those front-end services so they become really appealing and easy to engage with. So if you want to pay your council tax, it should be easy to get to the website, to be able to put in your credit card details, and it's all digitized. It could be easy for if you wanted to book up a bin truck or somebody to come and collect refuge because there's some rubbish lying around, right, in your local area. It should be easy for you to digitally be able to access council services. So the front website and using CRM technology is one of the things that they're driving. Something in the back end of a council is usually the contact center. So the contact center usually have operatives who will be taking calls from residents. And, you know, they've had a lot of calls to take recently, especially with the pandemic. So there could be health and well-being issues. There could be refuge collection. There could be council. There could be all sorts of issues that residents and citizens are facing. And one of the things I'm seeing happening in councils more and more is they're starting to use RPA, robotic process automation technology. And that technology allows an operative to integrate as they're taking the call and trying to deal with a customer incident or issue. They can pull up systems because the RPA or bots, if you want to, are able to pull up the right information so that they can see who this this citizen is, what's their history, how have they, you know, what have we dealt with this problem before? So just getting hold of their records, and robotic process automation really is now starting to take fold. And the third thing that I think councils have done, not all of them, they understand the value of data sets. So, for example, if you're in social care or adult and social care, you might want to be combining data from the police force with the adult social care health system, plus fire, ambulance, police, to get a better picture of an individual who might be at risk. And that's a great way how you combine those data sets to give you the most vulnerable people. I'm just giving you a use case, for example. So data is becoming really important for local authorities to combine that to give some insight.
No, it's really good to know that they're jumping on the data bandwagon, because it's amazing. I mean, some of the stuff that we see that is coming, you know, maybe I can hand over to Vidi and Chris to talk about some examples that we're working on of things that we wouldn't have thought about only a few years ago. You know, Chris, perhaps you can talk about the wearable stuff we're looking into, and Vidi, maybe some of the more fun dance stuff that we're looking at.
Oh, with the DJ system and
yeah.
So one of the most fun projects I've been involved with is it's essentially an AI DJ. So if you think about what the job of a DJ is, it's to read the room, read the crowd, play music to get people dancing, make sure they're as happy as possible. Now, your human DJ's just got to make the best guess he or she can, got to look around the room, see what everyone's doing. So we're trying to not only replicate that, so we're actually using people's phones to detect who's in a party, who's dancing, who's left the room, clearly not having a good time. But because we also can connect to music players and we know their taste, that gives us the best chance of trying to find music that will keep everyone as happy as possible. So, whether it's an individual hosting a party in their living room, or maybe it's a restaurant that wants to play music to match the mood of the crowd. That's something, that's kind of fusing the best of both worlds, both, trying to emulate what the best human DJs can do naturally, along with, just having access to data that they don't have. Yeah. So it's this fusion of worlds, I think, that's sort of an interesting kind of subdomain of AI.
Actually, yeah, this is a good angle for Vid to promote a competition that she's actually helped us put together then. Vidi, and make it, if it's okay, we are running over, so this will be our last update to everyone, and hopefully we'll hear from you all soon, and we'll send through an information, for our next webinars. And in fact, we've got one more poll that we want to ask very quickly. So Vidi, very quickly, just talk about the competition that we're putting out.
So we are actually training a robot to detect when people dance and when they're not dancing, in order to suggest better music and just to get a feel of which songs people actually bust moves to. So we have actually a few data scientists at Emerge IQ worked, and we've put an algorithm together that actually does this. And to train it, we need people to dance, because we need the robot to be able to detect when people are dancing and when they're not. So we've put a competition together, and just 3 lucky people will get a chance to win an Oculus, a Fitbit, and some Amazon vouchers. And yeah, all you have to do is dance, basically. It will be up on all our social media channels, and if you've signed up to receive newsletters from us, you will receive an email from us as well. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah, and it's a very easy process of just downloading an app that we've got as a training app, and you just listen to some music, shamelessly dance, if you don't mind. There are no cameras on you, so you can just go wild, and then you get a pretty good chance. The first 100 people who actually successfully complete the tests, they basically get drawn out of the hat. So you've got a pretty good chance. There's three pretty cool prizes to win one of those prizes. So we'll share that after.
By test, we mean just different types of dances, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We are running over. There's one last very quick poll. And that's just to find out what people are interested in doing for another session. We're going to start a new series, probably a bit more in and deep around specific areas and sectors. So if everyone could just, out of these options, we don't have another, but if you have got any specific AI, data science kind of things that you're really interested in learning about, then please either email us or select one of these options here very quickly for us, so that we have an idea of exactly what we can organize. Okay, I'll leave that for the next few minutes.
Follow us on LinkedIn and Instagram, and reach out to us wherever.
Absolutely. He'll let us know when the poll's done.
At the moment, the majority is data science and AI in health and wellness. 40%.
Sorry, what percent?
40.
Okay. Well, that's really good, because that's actually one of the ones that we would really like to take forward. We're developing an AI called Wellness IQ, and that's using wearables and phone sensor data, and basically capturing as much information around an individual so that we can help diagnose various ailments in different medical fields, and that's something which is very close to our hearts. So it sounds like an appropriate one for us to do for another session. Okay. There will be a recording. We're going to send it out. So, and please feel free to, please follow us on our various social channels. Reach out to us via LinkedIn and the email address if you have any requests or any inquiries. Tash, is there anything that you want to close off on?
No, nothing in particular. It's just that we're complementary to Emerge IQ, which is related to data science and AI. We do have a spin-off company called Emerge Academy, which is all about digital transformation, and CoolDip is also involved in that. We are going to have another webinar for that one in just over 2 weeks' time. So if you feel like you'd like to learn more, perhaps about the simulation training that CoolDip's done, or general digital transformation topics, feel free to join that webinar as well. I'll be hosting that alongside with CoolDip.
One not to miss.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time. Really appreciate the attendance, and hopefully you got some value out of this. We will send everything out to attendees. The copy of the Matrix of Change, some auxiliary information on about it, yada, 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 as mentioned before. Thanks again, everyone. Take care.
Take care. Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.
Take care.